American author Cal Newport mentioned in his book Deep Work that the ability to focus for a longer period and to really focus on your work becomes a superpower. Is this maybe the same conclusion that you can or that you came to with your work?
Exactly. The currency of reward today and the currency of success is data. And that data, whether it's obtained by a big company or a small company or an organization, is basically generated through programs that use the currency of action, which is called dopamine. This is a chemical in our brain which drives a lot of our decision making because it's the chemical that's involved in reward and in pleasure seeking. So the more reward you offer to somebody, the more interaction you get and the more you create a closed loop between that person and the program or the activity that they're doing. And obviously, if you take that activity and here we are again, and you fragment it into smaller sound bites, you get more interactions because you get repeated injections of dopamine rather than a subclinical, slow, consistent one. And none of that, of course, has to do with sustained thought. None of that has to do with any kind of consistency except the type of consistency that encourages addictive behavior. And that's why when we jump forward and we look at social media and we look at the applications, those applications are undergoing progressive, what I call stupidification from Facebook on down. Facebook emerged as the prototype, but now it's way too complicated for the average user because it involves actually reading things a little bit longer and occasionally, God forbid, having to write something back. So the applications progressively became shorter, quicker, faster, dumber, ending up with the ultimate of all stupidities, TikTok, which has mindless, useless millisecond sound bites. But that's not enough. Now they don't put one TikTok blog or blurb on the screen. They put 3 or 4. They call it sludging, I think. So that in case that isn't enough for you, so you can get a little bit more of that digital heroin by sort of parallel trying to see 4 things going on at the same time. So it's all progressive dumbing down and progressive increased fragmentation. And none of that encourages any kind of consistency in thought. And that, of course, then turns around and goes upstream into basic societal functions, such as politics, voting, civic participation, thinking about ideals, thinking about anything that really matters more than tomorrow. And that's why we have those problems in college that I've mentioned. That's why we have huge problems with Generation Z and the millennials, starting with the millennials, because there's a complete derailment from our evolutionary imperative of having to think things through before we do them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned here, and also in one of the interviews that I watched, and this one, I remember it went viral on social media, you compared social media to digital heroin. And it sounds like a pretty extreme comparison. Can you explain why something used by half the world's population could be as harmful as one of the most dangerous life-destroying drugs?
Because something is being used by half of the world's population. It's that simple. Anytime the human race does anything the same, it endangers our intellectual potential and it endangers our genetic survival. We are here because we have to be diverse. In the genetic world, equality has no place. That isn't to say that there should be unjust equality or discrimination, but in the genetic world, being different, being better, has rewards. That's kind of an aside to what you asked, but when we go back to what you asked, what is half of the world doing on the internet? Depending on the age group, if it's our most vulnerable user, from the child to the 18-year-old, they're spending 90% or more of their time on social media and video games. They're not looking up the capital of China or the number of plays that Shakespeare wrote. And that means that they're in the world of addicted technology, where every single thing that they're looking at has been designed by engineers to raise dopamine levels. And I'm not making this up. Everybody knows this. Neuroscientists measure dopamine levels when programs are being designed. Companies in Silicon Valley and elsewhere market themselves using the phrasework, we will increase the dopamine of our users and increase the likelihood of their using our app, and so on and so forth. So it's all about the dopamine circuit that I mentioned. It's all about a closed loop of addiction into essentially a mindless product that mines your personal data and sells it to anybody who's willing to buy it, whether it's the Chinese behind TikTok or anybody else.
So again, to just make sure that I understand well what you're saying from the layman perspective, does this mean that the reward path which triggers when I take heroin or any opioid or when I smoke or drink alcohol is the same kind of path that triggers when I on social media?
The answer to that depends on whether we're sitting at a table with neurologists only or the lay public. The neurologists only would dissect that question, but we would all come to the agreement that the mechanism is the same, because the brain basically has only one central pathway for pleasure seeking and recognition. And that pathway has dopamine as one of its chief, not only, but it's one of its chief neurochemical transmitters. So your dopamine will go up whether you're happy, whether you're making love, whether you're watching a sunset, whether you win in the casino, or whether you turn on your social media account and find out that your picture of your kitty cat went viral and you have 2,000 hits, or whether you inject heroin or smoke marijuana or take any other dopamine stimulating drug. Obviously, it will go up a lot more in the latter, but the mechanism is still the same. And not only I, but many of us use the analogy between digital media, particularly internet and especially social media, and heroin purposefully, and I do so because it's legitimate. Being on social media is digital heroin.
So it is addictive.
It is absolutely addictive. Okay. That has been proven in countless studies. In fact, there are detox camps in virtually every country on earth now for digital media addicts. Many of them are video game addicts, and the rest are social media addicts. Again, we come to the full-blown statistic. The average adolescent spends 4 to 4.5 hours a day on social media every single day, so that by the time that they're 18, it adds up to 30 school years on social media. You're spending 30 years of your brain development in your most sensitive and important years staring at a screen and not doing any thinking of any kind.
So are those guys who are spending so much time on social media maybe the future Darwin's natural selection, maybe the duty we have to pay as humanity to learn that, or the talk?
Evolution is such that all changes reflect the current environment, and in this particular case, it has to do with a plateau of IQ and a falling of IQ, according to many studies. It has to do with a drop in fertility rates. It has to do with an increase in anxiety and depression, so much so that in most developed countries, their national institutes of health openly state that anywhere between 30 and 40% of particularly the younger population is undergoing active anxiety and depression. It has to do with a proven loss of social skills, a proven loss of ability to deal with problems, a proven lack of desire for family planning, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is, how are these people going to be able to even set up successful families and rear children if they themselves have been reared in an environment that is a digital one, instead of a biological mother being with them for most of the day? In many instances, that mother will shove a tablet in front of the young child's face so that it won't, heaven forbid, won't be bored or won't disturb her in her activities. So the entire paradigm of modern society has drastically shifted into this self-centered, culture-driven comfort zone, where our only imperative has been put to one side, and that imperative is to have children and raise them, pay attention to them all day long, and then get out of the way, and not to give them a tablet so that they won't be bored.